Have you ever been one day away from losing everything? Emily Carter stared at the folded notice on her kitchen counter as if the words might change if she looked long enough. They didn't. The rent was overdue. The final deadline was tomorrow at 5 p.m. If she couldn't come up with the money, she and her 8-year-old daughter would have to leave the tiny apartment they had called home for nearly 3 years. Outside, gray clouds hung low over the city. Inside, the silence felt even heavier. Emily wrapped both hands around a chipped coffee mug, though the coffee had gone cold an hour ago. Across the room, Sophie sat at the small dining table coloring a picture of a house with a bright red roof. A smile spread across the little girl's face as she held it up. "Look, Mom, this is our house." Emily forced a smile. "It's beautiful, sweetheart." Sophie returned to coloring, completely unaware of the fear building inside her mother's chest. Emily wished she could stay that innocent forever. She glanced at the stack of unpaid bills beside the sink. The electric bill, the internet bill, a medical payment from months ago. Every envelope seemed to demand something she no longer had. 2 jobs still weren't enough. Every morning, she worked at a local diner. 3 evenings each week, she cleaned offices downtown. Most nights, she returned home exhausted, her feet aching after standing for 10 or 12 hours. Yet somehow the numbers never worked. Prices kept climbing. Hours were reduced. Life became more expensive while opportunities became harder to find. Her phone buzzed on the counter. The landlord's name appeared on the screen. Emily froze before answering. "Hello." The voice on the other end sounded polite but firm. "Emily, I just wanted to remind you about tomorrow." Her throat tightened. "I know. I'm sorry. I really am. But if payment isn't received by 5, there's nothing more I can do." The call ended. Emily lowered the phone slowly. For a moment, she simply stood there staring at the wall. Tomorrow. Less than 24 hours. That was all she had left. Sophie suddenly looked up. "Mom, are we okay?" The question hit harder than any bill. Emily walked over and knelt beside her daughter. "We're okay." She brushed a strand of blonde hair behind Sophie's ear. "Everything's going to be okay." She said it because that was what mothers did. They carried fear quietly so their children could keep smiling. Later that afternoon, Emily left for her diner shift. Rain had started falling, turning sidewalks slick and reflective. Cars splashed through puddles. Pedestrians hurried past beneath umbrellas. Emily pulled her worn jacket tighter around herself as she walked toward the bus stop. Her mind raced through impossible calculations. Borrow money. From who? Take another job? When? Sell something? There was almost nothing left to sell. Then something caught her eye near the curb. A dark leather wallet sat alone on the wet pavement. Expensive. Thick. Forgotten. Emily stopped walking. Her heart skipped a beat. She looked around. Nobody seemed to notice. The rain continued to fall as she slowly bent down and picked it up. The wallet felt unusually heavy in her hands. Emily stood beneath the rain, the wallet resting heavily in her hands. Water dripped from her jacket sleeves as traffic rolled past. For a long moment, she did not move. Then she opened it. Her breath caught instantly. Neat stacks of $100 bills filled one side. There had to be thousands of dollars inside. More money than she had seen in one place in years. Her heart began to race. The rain seemed to fade into the background as a single thought pushed its way into her mind. Rent. Tomorrow. One payment. One problem solved. Nobody was watching. Nobody knew she had found it. The owner could probably afford to lose it. People who carried this kind of money usually could. Emily closed the wallet quickly, almost as if it had burned her fingers. She looked up and down the street. Crowds moved past without paying attention. Everyone had somewhere to be. Nobody cared about a tired single mother standing alone in the rain. She slipped the wallet into her bag and continued toward the bus stop. The entire ride to work felt different. Every bump in the road reminded her that the wallet was there, waiting, tempting her. At the diner, she struggled to focus. Orders became harder to remember. Coffee cups almost overflowed. Her manager noticed immediately. "Everything okay, Emily?" She forced a smile. "Just tired." The truth was much more complicated. During her break, she sat alone in the storage room and opened the wallet again. This time she looked more carefully. Several credit cards, a driver license, business cards, one photograph. Emily paused. The picture showed an older woman smiling beside a teenage boy. The edges were worn, suggesting it had been carried for years. Something about that small detail made the wallet feel less like money and more like someone's life. Beneath the photograph sat a folded piece of paper. Emily carefully unfolded it. The note was short. Time had faded parts of the ink, but she could still read enough. It appeared to be a personal message from someone important to the owner. Her chest tightened. Whoever had lost this wallet was probably searching everywhere by now. Panic, frustration, worry. She knew exactly how that felt. Then her eyes landed on one of the business cards. The name printed in bold letters stood out immediately. Ethan Brooks. The company name beneath it looked familiar. Very familiar. Emily stared at it for several seconds before recognition hit. Ethan Brooks was not just successful. He was one of the most talked about business leaders in the country. His interviews appeared online constantly. News articles followed his every move. People described him as brilliant, private, and incredibly wealthy. Emily slowly leaned back in her chair. Of all the people in the city, she had somehow found his wallet. A bitter laugh escaped her lips. The universe had a strange sense of humor. Here she was counting every dollar, wondering how to keep a roof over her daughter's head, while the owner of this wallet was worth billions. Yet the thought lasted only a moment. Deep down, she already knew what she had to do. The difficult part was not making the decision. The difficult part was living with it. Because returning this wallet meant walking away from the one thing that could solve every problem waiting for her tomorrow. Emily finished her shift long after sunset. The rain had stopped, but the streets still glistened beneath the city lights. The wallet remained in her bag the entire evening, growing heavier with every passing hour. By the time she stepped through the apartment door, exhaustion covered her like a blanket. Sophie ran toward her immediately. "Mom." Emily smiled and hugged her tightly. "Hey, sweetheart. Did you have a good day?" The question was innocent. Simple. Emily wished the answer could be simple too. It was busy. Sophie nodded and returned to her coloring books while Emily prepared a modest dinner. Macaroni and cheese. One of the few meals she could make without worrying about the cost. Throughout dinner, she caught herself staring toward her bag. Sophie noticed. "What is wrong?" Emily hesitated. Then she decided to tell part of the truth. "I found something today. Something good." Emily thought for a moment. "I am not sure yet." Later that night, after Sophie had fallen asleep, Emily sat alone at the kitchen table. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator. She placed the wallet in front of her and slowly opened it again. The cash looked exactly the same. Thick stacks. More than enough to solve tomorrow's problem. Her eyes drifted toward the eviction notice lying nearby. She imagined waking up without fear. She imagined paying the rent, keeping Sophie safe, buying groceries without checking every price tag. For a few dangerous seconds, her mind began building a future around money that was not hers. Then she picked up the photograph again. The older woman smiled back from the faded picture. Emily wondered who she was. A mother? A grandmother? Someone Ethan Brooks had loved enough to carry with him every day. Suddenly, the wallet no longer belonged to a billionaire. It belonged to a person who was probably searching for it right now. Emily closed her eyes. She remembered something her own father used to say when she was a child. Character is what you do when nobody is watching. At the time, she had never understood why those words mattered. Tonight, they felt painfully important. Nobody was watching. Nobody would ever know. Yet she would know. Tomorrow, she could either look at herself with pride or spend years remembering the moment she became someone else. The choice was becoming clear. Emily reached for her phone and searched for Ethan Brooks's company. The corporate headquarters appeared immediately, a towering office building downtown, less than 30 minutes away. She copied the address onto a piece of paper. Her stomach twisted as she looked once more at the eviction notice. Returning the wallet would not save her apartment. It would not solve tomorrow's deadline. It would not make her life easier. In fact, it would make everything harder. A tear rolled down her cheek before she quickly wiped it away. Then she stood, placed the wallet carefully back into her bag, and turned off the kitchen light. As she walked toward her bedroom, she made a decision that felt equal parts terrifying and peaceful. Tomorrow morning, before anything else, she would return the wallet. What she did not know was that this single choice was about to change far more than her financial situation. It was about to place her directly into the path of a man whose life was far more complicated than anyone imagined. The next morning arrived too quickly. Emily barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw two futures pulling her in opposite directions. One offered temporary relief. The other demanded sacrifice. By 8 o'clock, She was standing outside the headquarters of Brooks Technologies. The building rose above the surrounding skyline like a monument to success. Glass walls reflected the morning sun. Luxury cars lined the entrance. People in tailored suits moved through the revolving doors with purpose and confidence. Emily looked down at her worn shoes and suddenly felt out of place. For a moment, doubt crept back in. What if nobody believed her? What if she spent hours trying to return the wallet only to be turned away? She took a slow breath and walked inside. The lobby was larger than some apartment buildings she had seen. Marble floors gleamed beneath elegant lighting. A receptionist sat behind a sleek desk near the center of the room. Emily approached carefully. "Good morning," she said. "I found something that belongs to Mr. Ethan Brooks." The receptionist offered a polite smile. "Do you have an appointment?" Emily shook her head. "No, but it is important." The woman listened as Emily explained. Her expression changed immediately. "Please wait here." Several minutes passed. Emily sat quietly while employees crossed the lobby around her. Some glanced her way before continuing on. She checked the time on her phone. Every minute felt precious. The rent deadline still hung over her like a storm cloud. Finally, a man in a dark suit appeared. "Miss Carter?" Emily stood. "Yes. Please come with me." He led her through security gates and into a private elevator. Her heart pounded harder with each floor they passed. The doors opened onto an executive level far removed from the busy lobby below. Everything felt quieter here. More controlled. More expensive. The man stopped outside a large office. "Mr. Brooks will see you now." Emily entered slowly. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city. Behind a modern desk sat Ethan Brooks. He looked exactly like the photographs she had seen online. Calm, sharp, difficult to read. His attention remained fixed on a document for several seconds before he finally looked up. Emily stepped forward and placed the wallet on his desk. "I believe this belongs to you." Ethan's eyes moved from the wallet to her face. A flicker of surprise crossed his expression. He opened the wallet and quickly checked its contents. The cash remained untouched. The cards were still there. So was the photograph. Silence settled between them. Emily waited. Part of her expected gratitude. Another part expected questions. Instead, Ethan simply closed the wallet. "Thank you." That was it. No smile. No visible emotion. No curiosity about how she found it. Emily blinked. "You are welcome." Ethan gave a brief nod. "I appreciate your honesty." The words sounded professional, almost rehearsed. The meeting appeared finished. Emily stood there for another second, unsure whether she should say anything else. Then reality returned. Rent. Bills. Sophie. None of those problems had changed. She forced a small smile and turned toward the door. As it closed behind her, disappointment settled heavily in her chest. She had done the right thing. Yet somehow walking away felt much harder than she imagined. What Emily did not know was that Ethan remained staring at the closed door long after she left, his hand resting on the worn photograph inside the wallet. After leaving the building, Emily stepped onto the crowded sidewalk feeling strangely empty. The city moved around her at full speed while she walked without direction for several minutes. She had not expected a parade. She had not expected a life-changing reward. Still, some small part of her had hoped for something more than a brief thank you. A few hours later, reality returned with brutal clarity. At exactly 5 o'clock that afternoon, her landlord knocked on the apartment door. Emily already knew why he was there. The conversation was polite but painful. He agreed to give her one additional week before taking further action. It was not a solution. It was only borrowed time. That evening, after Sophie went to bed, Emily sat at the kitchen table reviewing job listings. Most offered low pay. Others required experience she did not have. She rubbed her tired eyes and continued searching anyway. Across town, Ethan Brooks stood alone in his office long after most employees had gone home. The wallet rested on his desk. The photograph remained in his hand. The woman in the picture was his mother. The teenage boy beside her was Ethan himself nearly 3 decades earlier. He rarely showed emotion in public, but this photograph was one of the few possessions he truly valued. Losing it had unsettled him more than he wanted to admit. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. His executive assistant, Daniel Harper, stepped inside. "You are still here?" Ethan placed the photograph down carefully. "I wanted some information." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "About what?" "The woman who returned my wallet." Daniel looked surprised. "Most people would have taken the cash." Ethan gave a faint nod. That is exactly why I am interested. Daniel opened a tablet and began searching. Within minutes, basic public records painted a picture. Single mother. 2 jobs. Modest apartment. No criminal history. No major debt beyond ordinary financial struggles. Ethan, listen quietly. Anything else? Daniel hesitated. She appears to be 1 week away from eviction. The room fell silent. Ethan leaned back in his chair. Most people facing that kind of pressure would have kept the money. Few would have returned every dollar. Interesting, he said. Daniel studied him carefully. Are you planning to help her? Ethan walked toward the window overlooking the city. I do not know. The answer was honest. For years, people had disappointed him. Business partners, friends, even relatives. Wealth attracted agendas, promises, performances. He had learned not to trust first impressions. Yet Emily Carter kept occupying his thoughts. Not because she returned the wallet, because she returned it when she desperately needed a reason not to. Meanwhile, Emily closed her laptop after another disappointing search result. She glanced at the clock. Nearly midnight. Tomorrow would bring another long shift, another stack of bills, another fight to stay afloat. Before heading to bed, she checked on Sophie. The little girl slept peacefully beneath a worn blanket. Emily smiled softly. No matter what happened, she would keep trying. She had no other choice. What she could not see was that somewhere across the city, a billionaire was asking questions about her life, and the answers were beginning to challenge everything he thought he knew about people. 3 days passed. Nothing changed for Emily. She woke before sunrise, rushed Sophie through breakfast, worked long shifts, then returned home exhausted. Bills still waited on the counter. The extra week her landlord had granted seemed to be disappearing faster than she could earn money. Yet despite everything, she refused to let Sophie see her fear. One afternoon at the diner, Emily was refilling coffee when her manager approached. Someone called asking if we were looking for additional help. Emily looked up. Additional help? A small consulting company needs temporary administrative support for a few weeks. Flexible hours. Better pay than most entry-level office work. He shrugged. I thought of you. Emily blinked. Opportunities like that rarely appeared in her life. Do they know me? Apparently. Someone recommended you. Emily frowned slightly. She could not imagine who. Still, she accepted the contact information. Across the city, Ethan Brooks sat in a conference room reviewing reports. The discussion around him focused on investments and expansion plans, but his attention drifted elsewhere. After the meeting ended, Daniel entered carrying a folder. The opportunity was offered. Ethan nodded. Her response. She accepted an interview. Ethan leaned back thoughtfully. Good. Daniel studied him. You really are doing this. Doing what? Testing her. Ethan gave a faint smile. I am observing. Daniel laughed softly. That is not observation. Ethan ignored the comment. Deep down, he knew Daniel was partially right. Emily had sparked a rare curiosity. Not because she was extraordinary on paper. In fact, her life looked completely ordinary. What fascinated him was the gap between her circumstances and her choices. Experience had taught him that pressure revealed character. The more difficult life became, the easier it was for people to compromise their principles. Yet Emily had done the opposite. He wanted to know whether that honesty was real or simply a single moment. The following morning, Emily arrived at the consulting office for her interview. The company occupied a modest floor in a downtown building. Nothing flashy, nothing intimidating. A woman named Karen greeted her warmly. The interview felt surprisingly relaxed. Questions focused on organization, communication, and reliability. Emily answered honestly. She did not exaggerate her experience. She did not hide her struggles. An hour later, Karen smiled. I would like to offer you the position. Emily stared for a second. Really? Really? Relief washed through her, so suddenly she nearly laughed. The job would not solve every problem, but it paid significantly more than her diner shifts. More importantly, it offered consistent hours. For the first time in weeks, hope began to return. That evening, she celebrated with Sophie using takeout pizza and a movie rented online. It was not a grand celebration. It did not need to be. Sophie grinned through every bite. See, Mom? I told you things would get better. Emily smiled. Maybe you were right. Neither of them knew that several blocks away, Ethan Brooks was reading a report about the interview. He noticed one detail immediately. During the hiring process, Karen had accidentally informed Emily that the company budget included extra funds beyond what was necessary. Most candidates would have attempted to negotiate aggressively or request special treatment. Emily had not. She simply thanked them for the opportunity. Ethan closed the report slowly. The first observation matched what he already suspected. But one test was never enough. If he truly wanted answers, there would have to be another. The new job quickly became the brightest part of Emily's week. The work was not glamorous, but it was steady. She organized schedules, managed emails, updated spreadsheets, and handled administrative tasks that kept the office running smoothly. For the first time in months, she felt like she was moving forward instead of simply trying to stay afloat. 2 weeks after she started, another unexpected situation appeared. Late one afternoon, Karen stopped by Emily's desk carrying a file. "I need your opinion on something." Emily looked up. "Sure." Karen placed the folder in front of her. Inside was a vendor invoice. At first glance, everything seemed normal. Then Emily noticed a mistake. A significant one. The company had accidentally been billed nearly $3,000 more than it owed. Karen watched her carefully. "What do you think?" Emily pointed to the numbers immediately. "This is wrong." "Wrong how?" "Someone entered the quantity twice. If nobody catches it, the payment will be processed anyway." Karen nodded slowly. "Most people would not have noticed." Emily shrugged. "It is not our money." The answer seemed obvious to her. Karen thanked her and walked away. What Emily did not know was that the invoice had been intentionally altered before reaching her desk. Across town, Daniel was already reporting the result to Ethan. She caught it within 2 minutes. Ethan listened quietly. Did she know anyone was watching? No, Ethan stared out the window. Another test passed. A few days later, a second challenge arrived. This one felt far more personal. A client unexpectedly canceled a project, creating a temporary staffing issue. Karen called Emily into her office. "I have 2 options," she explained. "One position is easier. Less responsibility. Same hours. The other requires more effort, but it helps a coworker who is struggling with family issues." Emily listened carefully. "Which one would you choose?" Karen smiled slightly. "I am asking you." Emily thought for a moment. Her schedule was already packed. More responsibility would mean longer days. Less time at home. Yet she remembered how many people had helped her when life became difficult. "Give the easier role to the coworker who needs it," she said. "I will handle the other one." Karen thanked her. The answer found its way to Ethan's desk before the end of the day. By now, his curiosity had evolved into something deeper. Every report painted the same picture. Emily acted with integrity when there was no reward. She chose generosity when nobody would have blamed her for choosing herself. More importantly, she never seemed aware that anyone was paying attention. One evening, Ethan opened a file containing every observation gathered so far. He expected to find inconsistencies, contradictions, hidden motives. Instead, he found something increasingly rare. Consistency. The same values appeared whether the decision involved money, convenience, or recognition. Meanwhile, Emily remained completely unaware of the growing interest surrounding her life. She was focused on a far more immediate concern. Her landlord's extension was almost over. Although the new job helped, she still had not fully caught up on rent. The pressure was returning. Yet despite the uncertainty, she felt different now. Stronger. More hopeful. She believed hard work would eventually lead somewhere. What she could not imagine was that the biggest revelation of all was approaching. The mysterious opportunities, the unexpected job, the unusual circumstances surrounding her recent success were not random at all. Soon, someone would finally tell her the truth. On a quiet Thursday afternoon, Karen approached Emily's desk with an unusual expression. "Mr. Brooks would like to meet with you." Emily looked up from her computer screen. For a moment, she thought she had misheard. "Ethan Brooks?" Karen nodded. "His office called this morning." A dozen questions immediately raced through Emily's mind. She had not spoken to him since returning the wallet. Why would he want to see her now? Had she made a mistake at work? Was there a problem she did not know about? By the time she arrived at Brooks Technologies later that day, her stomach was tied in knots. The building felt just as intimidating as it had during her first visit. This time, however, she was escorted directly to the executive floor without waiting. Ethan stood near the window when she entered. The city stretched behind him beneath a clear blue sky. He turned as she approached. "Thank you for coming." Emily sat down carefully. Of course. For several seconds, neither spoke. The silence felt deliberate. Then Ethan finally smiled. It was the first genuine smile she had seen from him. I owe you an explanation. Emily frowned slightly. An explanation? Ethan walked back to his desk and opened a folder. The day you returned my wallet, I became curious. Emily listened quietly. Most people would have kept the money. Maybe, she said softly. But it was not mine. Ethan nodded. That answer is exactly why we are here. He proceeded to tell her everything. The temporary job, the recommendations, the unusual opportunities, the carefully placed situations designed to reveal how she handled responsibility, honesty, and pressure. As the pieces came together, Emily felt her disbelief grow. You tested me? Ethan did not look away. Yes. Emily sat back in stunned silence. Part of her felt frustrated. Another part struggled to process what she was hearing. For weeks, she had assumed events were random. Now she discovered someone had been quietly observing nearly every important decision she made. Why? She finally asked. Ethan took a long breath before answering. Because I stopped trusting people a long time ago. His voice carried a weight she had never heard before. Success taught me many lessons. Most of them were disappointing. I learned that money changes how people behave. It changes friendships, partnerships, sometimes families. He paused briefly. I wanted to know if someone could still choose the right thing when nobody was watching. Emily remembered the words her father used to say. Character is what you do when nobody is watching. A strange chill ran through her. Ethan continued. Every report I received showed the same thing. You acted honestly when dishonesty would have benefited you. You chose responsibility over convenience. You helped others without expecting recognition. Emily lowered her eyes for a moment. I was just doing what felt right. Ethan smiled again. Exactly. The room became quiet once more. This time the silence felt different. Warmer. More personal. For the first time, Emily saw something beyond the billionaire reputation. She saw a man carrying years of disappointment. Someone who had spent so long expecting the worst that genuine kindness now surprised him. What she did not know was that Ethan had not invited her there simply to reveal the truth. The real reason for the meeting had not yet been revealed, and it was about to change both her future and Sophie's forever. Emily sat quietly, still processing everything Ethan had revealed. The tests, the observations, the weeks of opportunities that had never been accidental. Part of her wanted to laugh at how unbelievable it sounded. Another part felt overwhelmed by the realization that one small decision on a rainy afternoon had set all of this in motion. Ethan opened a drawer and removed a folder. He placed it gently on the desk between them. There is one more thing. Emily looked down at the folder but did not reach for it. What is it? Something I should have done earlier. She slowly opened it. The first page contained information about an educational foundation funded by Ethan's company. The second page made her heart stop. Full scholarship approval, tuition, school supplies, academic programs, future college assistance. Every line carried Sophie's name. Emily stared at the document in disbelief. This cannot be real. Ethan smiled softly. It is real. Her eyes filled with tears before she could stop them. 4 months she had worried about rent, bills, groceries, and survival. Yet beneath all those daily concerns lived a deeper fear. She wanted opportunities for Sophie that she had never received herself. She wanted her daughter to dream without limitations. Now those possibilities suddenly stood in front of her. Why would you do this? She asked quietly. Ethan looked toward the city skyline before answering. Because people spend too much time rewarding success and not enough time recognizing character. The words settled heavily in the room. Emily lowered her gaze again. I do not know what to say. You do not have to say anything. Ethan reached for another document. There is more. Emily laughed softly through her tears. More. This time the folder contained a formal job offer. Not temporary work. Not short-term support. A permanent leadership role within one of the foundation's community outreach programs. The salary exceeded anything she had ever imagined earning. Training would be provided. Benefits included healthcare, retirement contributions, and flexible scheduling that would allow her to spend time with Sophie. Emily could barely believe what she was reading. You think I can do this? Ethan answered without hesitation. I know you can. For the first time in years, someone was not offering charity. Someone was offering trust. The difference meant everything. Several weeks later, life looked remarkably different. The eviction threat disappeared. Bills no longer controlled every decision. Sophie began attending new educational programs she loved. Laughter returned to the apartment. Hope returned too. One evening, Emily watched Sophie work on a science project at the kitchen table. The little girl looked up and smiled. Mom, yes. Remember when you said everything would be okay? Emily felt emotion rise unexpectedly. I remember. Sophie grinned. You were right. After Sophie returned to her project, Emily looked out the window at the fading sunset. She thought about the wallet, the rain, the impossible choice she had faced. She realized something important. Returning the wallet had not changed her life because it belonged to a billionaire. It changed her life because it revealed who she already was when nobody was watching. Across the city, Ethan stood in his office holding the old photograph of his mother. For years he had carried disappointment, convinced that genuine integrity was becoming rare. Then one exhausted single mother proved him wrong. Sometimes the most valuable thing a person can return is not a wallet. Sometimes it is another person's faith